So um, that it's that's fantastic. So what we've actually got to plan out the next year or the next 6 months, one of the things that has happened with me over the last month and a half is I've been focusing on organizing an investor forum where we showcase technology, where we showcase technology and entrepreneurs to the money, to people with money. And we're going to host an investor forum. And on that note, there's something called Climate Salad. There's a group called Climate Salad, a guy called Mick Libionskis, who I've been speaking to. He was going to come today, but he's just in the car at the moment, and his headphone wasn't working. But he started with a company called Pollinizer that invested in a company that we were involved in called Booking Angel that turned into Spreets, that sold to Yahoo for $40 million. And the two partners of Pollinizer, Mick's gone, just focusing on Climate Salad and organizing a fund to invest in climate-related tech. So ideally, within the next 6 months, we're going to have an investor forum with climate, regenerative, ag tech type opportunities, which will be presented to people with money, the likes of Lieberman, Gandel. You won't know them in America, but the billionaires. We can potentially go to Tim Draper and showcase the opportunities to money. We'll speak to Bobby Fishkin, and it'll be a great event where we'll have 4 or 5 technologies presenting to probably 50 to 100 investors who are interested in that space. We'll do it on Zoom, and we'll do it over lunch. And maybe we can even do it in San Francisco. You can host it in San Francisco, Herman. So that's an exciting thing for me. The next one would be hopefully in the next 6 months. Maybe if you're having the dinner in May, Pearl, maybe in March we can have your Robbie talking on regeneration and what you're actually doing, and we can invite people who are interested in climate, both nationally and internationally, to the event, and maybe have 50 to 100 relevant corporates coming to that forum. If you're open to that, we can potentially have that. Then we can talk about Paul Werbos. Maybe we can have a session similar to what we did with Herman and Lisa, where you'll talk about what you've done with the IEEE, what the opportunity is, what the extinctions are, what potential solutions are in respect of science. And we can then, you speak for 45 minutes, and then we again break into think tanks where we can share, where we get the guests to share the insights on what you were actually on what you were talking about, and they can give their views and their opportunities, and we can go from there. The next forum that we can have is the Lookup Forum, where we can potentially get, we don't even need the actual actors or producers. We've actually got the content. We can showcase that in the forum, and ideally we can have Tony Collette or some of the actors come and introduce themselves face to face, and I'm sure we'd be able to. But the objective is to present that in the forum, and we already have the 45-minute interview, followed by the discussion afterwards, where what action can we take? And by doing that effectively are 4 great forums. And John, I was researching what you're doing. It's like sort of beyond unbelievable, looking at the bus run by solar power. Was that you? Yes?
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm not sure if you maybe you could present at the investor forum if you're looking to raise money. Not sure. And then the other opportunity with Lucille, you'd be talking, I would assume, at the investor forum where you'd be showcasing Be Smart and Synergy.
Spinergy, yes.
And
yeah.
Synergy.
That would be great.
And then with the next forum, we can have Herman and Lisa talking again on idea scale, on potentially idea scale, and like part 2 of their original talk. So the first talk was where we were, what we're doing, and what we can do. You can do the next talk to say this is what you should be doing, where with the objective of actually getting the corporates to say, I want to know more, because at the end of the day, things will only work if how do we actually engage clients to act, or clients or members or whatever you want to do, how do we actually engage them to work with us? So for example, ideally Herman and Lisa, and however what's the word, however altruistic we are, what we need is we need people to engage with our products or services. So at the end of the day, Herman and Lisa has got a product that's a blueprint, and they have a methodology where they go into corporates and can make a significant difference. And I know, Herman, you said that consulting isn't the main thing that you want to do, but maybe an objective of ours, of this group, is to say, how do we actually get people to make a decision? If corporates are actually making a decision to pay, to talk about what they can do with climate, when people pay, they actually say, I want to spend time and energy on this. If they don't pay, it's just, oh, well, maybe it's just an okay thing.
So actually, I think that we do want to do consulting, like strategic, as well as helping people get innovation and creating solutions into the space. Like the strategic is that the leaders make a commitment and they set budgets and they get people on board, or they get their partners. And then the innovation part is, how do we go from that to get all of our people engaged and start creating solutions? And do we have a set innovation process? We just want it to be only on climate. So
I agree, totally.
That's our goal for the year, is to do as much of that as we can do.
Which is why, which is effectively why we actually, one of the reasons why we actually created this Climate Action Forum in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, that was
please forgive me if I comment on why I was so happy to hear Pearl speaking. So happy.
Please tell us, Paul.
Because I'm hoping within days IEEE will allow us to release the 5-point climate strategy that we think makes sense. When it comes to less greenhouse gas and making electricity, you can't beat IEEE. You guys can't compete with us. And when it comes to transportation, there are a few connections we have that it would be hard to perturb. But regenerative agriculture is basically right at the center of the third big pillar of how to reduce net greenhouse gases. And when I started to put the book together, I was incredibly frustrated because I was looking for a leader of the section on agriculture and related. And I know some things. I know experts the world doesn't know. I've worked to try to read that literature, but I couldn't find a competent leader who was honest and objective who would head this part. There are lots of people who want to sell their own farm. There are lots of people from big corporations who kind of want to exploit the masses. I hate to say it, but that's, sort of how it works.
It's real.
There's a great guy in Brazil. The best I found was a guy named Steenbach in Brazil, but then he had a little problem called Bolsonaro. And I see new connections building in South America. In Chile and Brazil, I see new opportunities coming up. And if we start building networks, that's important. I can help, but I'm sure glad to see a real regenerative agriculture person. Whether you have the technical expertise, I don't know. But I don't think anybody has all the technical expertise. So the number one thing we need is honesty and networking. And if I found somebody just now who meets that, that could be kind of critical. because this whole agriculture part of the network really needs to be improved, far beyond what we see right now in the electric power and car areas.
Okay, Paul, did you hear what Lucille's developed a technology in Adelaide called Spinergy, which is about what's the story with AgTech that you got there, Lucille, and what you're doing in Gippsland with Brendan?
So there's two things. So Spinergy is an inline generator for generating power from whatever's flowing through a pipe. And it's self-contained. There's no seals, no shafts that come out of pipes to a generator. The generator is within the pipe, and that can generate power as a secondary process to whatever the primary process is of moving stuff through pipes.
So Lucille, if I may, Paul, very simply, in layman's terms, there's a pipe, and in the pipe there's an impeller, not a propeller, an impeller that goes around. As liquid goes around, it moves the impeller, and on the outside of the pipe is the various cells that actually enables electricity to be created without creating. And it's a patented technology that I think the IEEE would fall all over themselves.
And I think this is where Ideascape can really come in, because putting up the idea of regenerative agriculture as a topic. So into that would come the people that Paul's looking for. Into that would come people like Spinergy and others who have technologies for that. Into that would come the investors who are interested in investing in such things. And I think the Ideascape can be, I mean, I haven't had a close look, but it seems to me from the description that that's the kind of thing that could constantly be being used each time a new idea or a different technology or another problem comes up. Create an Ideascape for it.
Yeah,
that's the idea. It's, by the way, it's idea scale, but
idea scale.
No, but it's great. It's about scaling ideas, right? It's exactly what you're talking about, Lucy. And I think in combination with what Paul had just talked about and what Pearl talked about, and now you're sort of adding to that the idea that we have a platform that allows functional, applicable ideas to be evolved, to be exchanged, to be built on, to be iterated, to basically grow. So that's one idea.
And we put up, Harmon just put up another link to, we're also connected to air miners, which are based around us in Silicon Valley, but are also global all over the world. And they are specifically about mining the air, they're all about carbon removal. Not as much about decreasing emissions. It's much more about what are all the different ways to get carbon out of the atmosphere, because clearly we look at the numbers now and decreasing emissions will not get us out of trouble in time. So how do we actually get the carbon out and carbon equivalents?
Agriculture is a fundamental driver for that.
So what Harmon put up is they have a course that we're doing now, and they have all the content that's up online, which you can look through yourself. We're doing a course where they just put you into small groups that you sign up for certain times. So we're doing a 10-session twice a week, so 5-week course. And this next course on Saturday is about regenerative agriculture.
Paul's topic.
So it's the very first topic about, so this will have links to what they think their resources are if you want to look at agriculture as a way of drawing down carbon. And one of the things they recommended that we just saw last night was a video by a guy from Nori, which I've seen before, but Nori is an interesting carbon marketplace, but about getting farmers to be able to afford to switch from traditional agriculture to regenerative agriculture. And so people can take the carbon credits for the carbon in that soil if they are paying the farmers to make this switch. So they have it's a financial system and an educational system about the importance of soil microorganisms in climate. And so I think they talk about how do you help farmers. There were 3 things. I don't see if I remember. I don't know. How do you help farmers learn about cover crops, no-till, cover crops, and then crop rotation, and to be able to pay to do those 3 things. and if you do that, you get measurable results in the increase of organisms in the soil and carbon drawn down into your soil, and you can measure it all.
Great.
Brilliant.
Ivan,
John.
one comment I'd like to make is that a lot of what we're talking about today is great, but I think what we need to do is we need to distinguish between the design and the conceptual and the network and so forth, and the practical execution to create results, whether it be for Indigenous poorer countries or COP27 or whatever, right? And very simply put, that requires money. And my focus this year, above all else, is on money. You know, the billions of dollars in breakthrough energy, the billions of dollars in Bezos Earth Fund, the money that was just pumped the other day into underground storage by who was it, Goldman Sachs or something. There is an unbelievable amount of money around the world. And there is an enormous disappointment in COP26, which is why we're having COP27. And people are coming up with all sorts of theoretical solutions for 250. But based on the compound interest principle, if you don't start doing something about greenhouse gases now, you're going to have a huge balance sheet of greenhouse gases by the time you get to a break even in 250. So 230 has got to be the focus. Now, a group like ourselves, in my view, if we can generate all sorts of passions and all sorts of ideas and concepts, let's take them to the money. And let's see if we can actually mobilize money to some of our passions and our interests to actually be able to say at the end of 22, we created a result which is going to decrease greenhouse gases, for argument's sake, or increase the viability of Sub-Sahara.
Hallelujah. And that's exact, John. I couldn't actually have said that better myself. At the end of the day, talk is, like I've always said, money talks and bullshit walks. If people, we have the smarts, we have the power, we have the networks, we have the influence to actually say these are the things we're going to do, and we shouldn't be shy to actually say this is the money that we need to put behind it. And it actually starts with us to actually say, are we prepared to do this? Are we prepared to work as a collective to do that? To actually, I think what we built is the foundations. I'll say, John, I'll send you the 77 little video snippets over the last 6 months. We've actually built a foundation of trust. We've built a foundation of what the issues are. We've built a foundation of very smart people who are aware. Now let's actually say, and we've actually identified the streams of where we're actually going to play. So the first stream that we're going to play is how do we get to the corporates and take the corporates to take action. And we've got a methodology to do that. Then we said, okay, well, if we're going to get it to the masses, how do we actually create a film similar to Look Up? And we've actually got that film, which has actually been done for us. As we were talking about it, one of our plans was to build a movie similar to Looking Up. We've now got that. How can we leverage on that, which is great. The third one is an investor forum where we actually take ideas to money. How do we actually get the billionaires and the likes of Bezos and Lieberman and Draper and everyone to the table where they can look at opportunities and say, wow, yes, I'm going to invest in that. People will invest with, and the reality of it is if someone invests $2 million, if a billionaire, if Bezos invests $10 million and gets a 20x return, the reality of it's actually going to make no difference to his life. The reason why he's investing is either bragging rights that he can actually say to his mate, I've invested in this, or he can say, listen, I believe that this technology or this opportunity will actually make a change to my grandchildren. And climate is going to be the place to be over the next 10 or 15 years. Why can't this group be a leading voice where we can collaborate, learn, and grow together, and where we can inspire, enthuse, and engage people to take action? And that's it.
And I think it's important not to overlook what has been done, because 6 months is a very short time frame. And Ivan, to your credit, you've pulled together corporates, you've pulled together this forum. Apart from that, you've got a submission into government with regard to bringing corporates and schools together and expanding awareness. We've got the other one that we've just talked about which would be very, very significant. You know, yes, we've still got to get the funding and the approvals from those, but if those two programs took off, they're multipliers in their own right, and they are idea scalers in their own right, if you like. And then we've got this brilliant idea of idea scale that's come today that I think, as we start to use that, we're going to see things like John is after happening as a direct result of the implementation of something like idea scale, which is a direct result of the implementation of something like this Climate Action Forum. And so that it starts to be a multiplier, building and building and building.
That's right.
I think by the end of this 12 months, we'll sit back and go, wow, we didn't think we would achieve that much.
I think so too.
John has pricked my conscience. John has pricked my conscience, because I think we need a balanced, comprehensive strategy. And that's where the regenerative agriculture fits in. But if we want results immediately, there are two things we are working on through the IEEE book, which are much more immediate. And I don't know how much comparative advantage you guys would have in either of these two. If you want to pull carbon dioxide from the air, we have a really top guy from NASA doing something. I shouldn't talk about it, but I want to promise you we covered that base. On the other hand, if I got to pick just one tangible project to really move the CO2 quickly in a cost-effective way that's real, that we know about, the project that I would focus on is combining the forces I've learned about with the solar power towers and the thermal storage, new conversion technology. And my target would be the European Union showing the new government of Germany they don't have to buy the damn gas from Russia, because we can put together a team combining real present technologies. The biggest barrier right now is persuading the lawyers at General Electric. You mentioned specific companies. It turns out General Electric has the most advanced proven conversion technology from heat to electricity, ready to go industrial scale today. And the primary barrier is convincing the damn lawyers at General Electric that they should be willing to work with the rest of the world in order to sell their product. But right now, the financial sector is all worried about mergers and acquisitions, and do we really want to do technology? And they're sitting on top of an efficient technology, well-proven, commercial scale, ready to scale up to meet all the needs of Europe. And it's just sitting there in GE Energy. And they were talking to me 2 weeks ago, and they said, damn it, the lawyers are getting in the way. But we were ready to go on that until these damn lawyers with the mergers and acquisitions got in the way. But the technology is there to compete with the Russian gas, with zero carbon dioxide, massive improvement in national security for Germany. That's the one I would be pushing tomorrow if I wanted a solution tomorrow. And it's there, and the problem is the damn lawyers in the way.
And the same thing with John Menega, what he's doing with what you're doing, John. Is that correct? Like,
I think I think you can really split the thing right smack bang down the middle. And on the one hand, call it topics. On the other hand, call it targets. Now, the targets, in other words, the funders and the centers of influence and the relevant politicians and other things like that, that's a platform, that's a structure, that's a mechanism, that's a process. You can design and build all of that regardless of anything that we've spoken about today. Anything we've spoken about today. So step number one is to build, a step is to build that platform and that process. So when you've got something, bang, you just plug it in. So if you want to go to breakthrough energy, Bill Gates wrote the book, How to Avoid Climate Change and so forth, right? Now, he covered a lot of topics in that, but there are some glaring omissions out of that book. For example, decentralization, etc. Now, if you want to get to Bill Gates, how do you go about it? If you want to get to Bezos, how do you go about it? If you want to influence the German government and so forth, how do you go about it and get around the lawyers and get the lawyers, somebody to kick the lawyers' butt and say, get out of the way, we're trying to do, COP27 for argument's sake. That's something I think, Ivan, which people like yourself and myself and some of the team here could work on the structure. Then we take each of the topics, and there's been a lot of great ones here today, and we say, well, where can we plug those in? Where can we plug the interests of IEEE in? And who do we target? How can we do the indigenous and sub-Saharan and all that sort of stuff? Where do we target it in, et cetera, so forth? So, it's a classical process-driven thing.
John, I agree. And I think that's exactly what we've been trying to do. And I think we've been trying to do that for 4 years now. And I think we've sort of nailed that process. So BBG, which we've created, has actually now got 17 different forums. So this is the Climate Action Forum. We have another one called the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Forum. And each forum has 10 or 12 key players who want to become the center of influence of that specific target market. And that's what the Climate Action Forum is 10 or 12 or 15 key influencers that wants to become the center of influence. And how do we make massive change? And what are the things
I've got a list of about, I think it's about 20 to 30 financial categories, each one being a distinct mechanism and process in its own right, but being very influential to the bottom line of raising funds or offtake or collaborators or whatever. It's actually quite complex, but it can be process driven and process managed.
I totally agree.
Now, if we do that, and to start with, one of the first things that everybody's got to do is accept it.
I agree.
Now that might seem difficult, but I work with a guy in Europe, in France, who's technologically brilliant. PhDs, Bugattis, this, that, blah, 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 etc. But in my view, he suffers the classical transition from the safety of R&D to the death zone of commercialization. And it's called the death zone. In the books, it's called the death zone. And how do you make that transition? We as a group have got to accept, hey, let's raise $1 billion to do something or other, provided it's warranted, of course, due diligence, etc. Sure. But not be scared of the money.
I agree.
And I think to do that, rather than focusing on the billion, which is important and that's where you end up, we have to focus initially on getting sufficient funds as a pool or through groups of investors that bring us whoever that new tech company is. Might be John's, might be Spinergy, might be BSmart, might be something we haven't heard of today, or Brendan's Power for You. Bringing that entity through the early to late stage commercialization, getting over that chasm that everybody's well aware of, and carrying them through to the point where they can then show on their profit and loss in their balance sheet, look,
I have got a turnover of $2 million with a profit of even only 5%, but here I am, I'm ready to scale up. And from there, the big guys with the hundreds of millions or the billions will come in, but nobody will come in with the smaller amount.
I'll give you an example of what we did, and we can potentially duplicate that over here. So in 2003, we created a fund. The government gave 10 companies $8 million each, and we were one of them. And we took that $8 million and we created these investor forums, and we showcased 8 companies every 3 months to high net worth individuals and funds. And over the next 4 or 5 years, we invested in 23 companies, helping them with their businesses. Lucille was one of them. She had a business called DigiSmart, and which listed. And we invested in 24 companies, of which three are unicorns, and probably about 6 or 7 did okay, and the rest failed. Now the unicorns, Redbubble is now worth $1.3 billion. We've just had an exit this week of a company. Our percentage was tiny, like 2 or 3%. But a company this week called Lease Eagle that provides rental software for commercial tenancies has just been sold for $15 million. That was yesterday. And we'll get a nice payout. Thank you very much. But the reality of it is how it was created was through continuity. We'd host an investor forum every 3 months. The people would come to us because they knew that this was a way in which they can connect to the money, and we would do their business plans. The government would contribute money for us to do the business planning, and we would charge $30,000 to get them to the investor forum. The company would only have to put in 5, the government would put in 25, and that's how we grew our business. And what I'm trying to do is, we've got that formula, and I'm taking that formula and that process and that procedure, and over the last 4 years, I've taken that formula and I'm duplicating it. And instead of actually saying, listen, let us own it, like which BSI owned that fund, what I'm saying is, let the Climate Action Forum, let that be the vehicle. And whatever that costs, we as the members are the beneficiaries of that business, so that it's not so at the end of the day, this Global Climate Action Forum, we each pay a nominal amount to cover the costs, which we've identified as $200 a month, which would cover all the costs of creating the relevant forums. Because and by doing that, we then become a player. If you don't actually become a member and you're not actually involved, it becomes very hard to, I'm very surprised and I'm amazed that this group has actually stayed 6 months without actually committing to saying, yes, I'm happy to become a financial member. And kudos to all of us for actually staying together and making that happen. But let me just finish now. When we get to the stage now to say, okay, it's time to actually go out as a unit to raise money. Who's going to raise the money? If you aren't financial members of this organization, the person who's going to raise the money will be us, will be BBG. And which is fine. But ideally, what needs to happen is the people raising the money needs to be this group. We need to be the foundation. Effectively, we are a virtual firm. And I'm seeing the basic financial figure, and whether it's $50 a month, $100 a month, or $200 a month, or $1,000 a month, I don't care. The money is actually going to come from sponsorship. I think that we'll get significant dollars besides our stipend to actually fund what we have to do. And I think that there'd be money funded to do your blueprints, I think that should be funded. That there becomes that can potentially be funded by the likes of a Gates or a whatever. Or
so I think this is a bigger discussion, and Herman and I have to go. So just like a quick thought, and we'll be thinking about it. There's about 4 different groups that we're working with that are something similar. And some of them, what they've done is they've gotten sponsors. So they're not actually asking the people who are putting in their time already to be the ones who are paying.
No,
but they try
I'm not even asking about them
by saying, here's the luminaries you get. But anyway, the other thing, just so that you know before we go, is that we also, just because another offering that's in there that may be a money-making offering as well, is that we do a lot of coaching of startups. We're in Silicon Valley. So mostly what our consulting has been is with the larger companies or governments or big NGOs that pay consulting fees or training programs. But also we work with some of the local incubators and we've written about, because we help companies set up their own internal innovation process. So we do this with Plug and Play, where they bring us their startups, and they have great sustainability startups if it's a place to find them, or in addition to air miners, lots of other places. And we coach the startups the same way we would coach internal innovation teams, and they pay us a fee for that. So that's when the startups are if you're going to bring startups in to meet the investors, and you give them a certain amount of time for their pitch, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 3 minutes, like whatever it's going to be, 15 minutes, to help them prepare before they walk in, that they don't just walk in cold and do something that will not impress investors.
Well, that's something that we need anyway.
But they pay for that as well.
That's great.
So when they have the investor forums at Plug and Play, they charge the people coming for an event fee, but then they also charge the startups to get ready. And then amazing things happen. They have well-prepared startups. They have funders who are committed, and these things get funded. So
that's exactly
it's a little bit more sustainable.
That's exactly the model. But right now, all I'm saying is for us to actually say, and it's not about the money, Lisa. At the end of the day, hopefully we'll pay you more than you pay us. It's about actually saying we are part of an organization that we are committed. And
so let's try to find a sponsor that wants this to exist.
Your organization.
So anyway, but we'll look forward to talking to you whenever the next meeting is.
Sounds great. It'll be 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. And what we'll do is we'll now try and work out a timetable for the next 6 to 12 months and build on that. But at this stage, we haven't got sponsorship, Lisa, and we just, and at the moment, it's all lying on me. So that's where we are right now.
Well, thank you for that, Ivan. Great to meet you, John. Sounds amazing. Paul, you rock. I can't wait to see how you transform the world. Lucille, what an amazing project. And Pearl, wonderful. It's just great to,
So
what a great start into the year.
Great. Also, I just want to take